We're in the Sundarbans. Now, the Sundarbans is the world's largest mangrove forest. It's at the point where the Ganges flows into the Indian Ocean, and this is a saltwater forest. It's the place where tigers have never been hunted. It's about 2/3 in Bangladesh and 1/3 in India, but the Indian side is better studied and the tigers are better known there. Tigers have taken maybe 100 people a year on average, perhaps much more. You see, the Sundarbans is surrounded by villages, and the villagers have to go into the Sundarbans in order to get their livelihood taken care of. They might be honey collectors, they might be collecting wood, but they need to go into the Sundarbans. And often they go into the Sundarbans illegally. And the result is, if a tiger takes one of those illegals, there's no way of knowing, usually, that that person is gone. There's no record of it. Now, the Sundarbans is a place where tigers have never been hunted. And the assumption is that that's one of the reasons why they're so aggressive. Tigers are the world's largest cat. They can be as much as maybe 600 pounds or so, or a little less than that. They're also unusual for cats in that they like to swim, and so that the Sundarbans is a place where they're very much at home. Tigers and jaguars both swim a great deal. Most other cats don't, of course. Now, the result is that these cats are very, very flexible in what they eat, for example, because there's not a whole lot in the Sundarbans. It's not like the Serengeti. And tigers also are unusual in that they have a very wide variety of color patterns. Now, we always think of tigers as being an orange cat with black stripes, but albinos are known, and there are some white tigers which are not albinos. They have blue eyes, which is how you can tell the difference, or one of the ways you can tell the difference. In addition to that, there's an extremely rare variety of tiger, which is entirely black, as though it were a panther or something. Now, because the Sundarbans is surrounded by villages and the tigers are taking quite a few people, you would think that any place in India that was a tiger reserve that was surrounded by villages like this, there'd be the same basic problem. But that's not true. In most of India, in fact all of India but the Sundarbans, there are villages around all the tiger reserves, and tiger attacks are extremely rare. Maybe you'll have one of them a decade or so along these other reserves. So the fact that there are so many people being attacked by tigers in the Sundarbans is unusual. And people have been looking for the reason why that may be true. There have been a number of different theories. One is that the tigers have been drinking salt water, and the result is that the tigers are irritable because they've been drinking salt water instead of fresh water. And so in order to alleviate that, freshwater ponds were intentionally built in the Sundarbans so the tigers can get fresh water. This did not help. Another theory is that tigers have gotten rather used to eating people. Now, there are a couple of reasons why that's true. One has to do with the Ganges River itself. It's a holy river, and although most Indians cremate their dead, if you happen to be a particularly poor person, your relatives may simply wrap you in linen and throw you into the Ganges River. In January this year, there were 100 bodies that floated up in the Ganges River. The result is that these bodies usually end up down in the delta someplace. And so any animal could come by and start eating them, and that may very well be where the tigers got their taste for people. That may not be the case. It may be something else, of course. It may very well have to do with the fact that the Ganges floods this delta, and there are tidal floods all the time. And so one of the theories is that tigers lose their territorial markings. And the result is that they have to be unusually aggressive to defend their territory. Although that might be true, it's not something that is terribly intuitive. Tiger populations have been dropping in India for decades and decades. A century ago, there were hundreds of thousands of tigers in India, and they killed people all the time, and the result was that hunting them was a big deal. And everybody looked upon the hunter as being the savior of mankind when they killed a few tigers. Billy Mitchell, the American general, actually spent a lot of time in India, and he wrote about the importance of hunting tigers back in the 30s and 40s. As a matter of fact, he's got an article that's on a National Geographic website that I read recently. It's very interesting. The tiger populations dropped until quite recently. The last few years, they're up about 30%, but worldwide, there are still probably less than 5,000 tigers in the wild. About 70% of those are probably in India.